Okay, so my chapter that I chose was chapter two, which was mediated communications and technology and social media and that kind of stuff. Um, so basically, when social media and like computers and phones and all that kind of stuff first came out, there was a lot of experts and scientists and stuff that were really afraid of it and didn't want people using it and that kind of stuff because they thought a lot that people were going to rely solely on your mediated communications and just sit in their house and not talk to people or go out and see people face to face. Um, and they would lose like all of their social skills pretty much because I mean, if you're not talking to anybody, you have no reason to keep up or improve your social skills if you when you're sitting at home behind a screen texting somebody. So that's what a lot of the experts or scientists and people like that thought was going to happen when this all came out. Turns out most of that didn't happen. I mean, obviously now phones are a huge thing in most of our lives, but they're not replacing face-to-face communications. Um, a lot of people use their phones or an email or that kind of stuff to send messages to people that they can't see very often or that are important for like business and that kind of stuff that sometimes in email you have to get a hold of them right away. So like an email or a text or something is going to work better than trying to call them and then they don't answer or drive over there and talk to them and they may not be home or whatever. So it their fears weren't really warranted, um, but nevertheless they were still there. Um, so in the chapter, they split a lot of the or basically they split the communications up into two different categories. The first category they split it up was what they called a leaner message. Um, kind of like your lean meats, like they've got less in it, basically. Um, when they said that they're mostly mediated, um, and most of them are like stark and they lack like your nonverbal cues, which are your facial expressions, your tone of voice, your body language, that kind of stuff, which you don't get when you're behind a screen and people can't see your face or hear you talk, that kind of stuff. So you don't get all those extra things that as humans we lean on for under getting a better understanding of what the other person is saying. The second category was like a richer message. So it's gonna be more in person, face to face, that kind of stuff. And it's gonna have all those nonverbal cues so people can read your body language, they can read your facial expressions, they can read your tone of voice and like your emotions and that kind of stuff. And they're gonna get a lot more out of that conversation because they have a lot more to go off of. So more likely than not, they're going to understand your conversation better and they'll remember it better because they have more understanding and they know it better and stuff that you know better you tend to remember. um, and then after the richer and leaner messages thing, um, we move on to like synchronicity, which is basically, it sounds really complicated, but basically all it is when two or more people that are communicating are connected in real time. So basically you're talking to somebody face to face, you're not um, texting them or emailing them or whatever. A phone call would be a synchronous thing because you're talking to that person live. Like there's no delay in any of the conversation or anything. Like a FaceTime, that would be a synchronous type of communication. And then they went on to asynchronous, which is the opposite. It's you're not connected to them in real time. There's a delay between your messages and whatnot, like a texting or a Snapchat or an email, something to that effect, where you send something, you wait, and then maybe you'll get something back. So that's not the same as these synchronous ones where you're talking to that person in real time and they're responding and you're responding and so on and so forth. Um, so the next thing to talk about from this chapter is disinhibition, which basically means that scientists and experts have found through studies that people communicate more bluntly and honestly over your mediated communications because they don't have to worry about like how you're going to react or whatever because they're not close to you usually. So they tend to be more blunt and honest, whether they should be or not, um, in your texting and your phone calls and whatever, because they don't have to worry about how you're going to react while they're next to you or by you or in real time or that kind of stuff. So there's a lot more things that you probably wouldn't say to a person's face that you do say when you're texting or you're emailing somebody or you're Snapchatting somebody or whatever because you don't have to worry about how they're going to feel afterwards because you're not with them. Um, and then the next thing to go over is hyperpersonal communication, which basically is what they found in studies and whatever has showed that like your leaner communications and messages and stuff and your asynchronous allow people to form quicker relationships, which seems like it should contradictive. It seems like that shouldn't be what happens. But from all their studies, they've found that people that are like doing a project online over the phone and like they're talking to each other and whatever over the phone and not in person have had much better and stronger and develop their relationship faster than people who were doing it all in person and um, talking to each other face to face. So now we go on to the pros and cons of mediated communication. I will start with the pros. Um, One of the pros of your mediated communications is you have more relationship opportunities, which is pretty obvious with our Instagrams and our Snapchats and Facebooks and Twitter and whatever. There's so many more opportunities to connect with people that you wouldn't normally or that live a long ways away so you wouldn't be able to see them or ever hang out with them. And with these mediated communications, you have that chance. Um, the second pro is sustaining or enriching your relationships. And with your mediated communications, you have the chance to, even if someone's not close to you, um, you can still keep up with them. And now with our phones and everything, you can just dial them up and say, "Hey, how's your day going?" When before the phones and the emails and whatever, you couldn't do that. So we have a lot better chance to have stronger, better relationships with our mediated communications. Some of the cons are like you develop superficial relationships, which are relationships that are like they're not really good ones. Studies have found that people usually can only support about 150 relationships at once, and with our social media and everyone's going for likes and friends and followers and whatever, everyone's got a lot more than 150 followers or things like that, and most of those relationships they can't support. So, and then the next one is social isolation, and that basically means people that stay behind a screen and text and do that stuff a lot don't have they feel lonely more than they don't because they're never seeing anybody. So that's a con. Um, and the biggest one probably is deception. It's very easy to deceive people over mediated communications. So yeah, and the then that's about it for that chapter. So yeah.